In some other case, you can see here, like response to the like procurement, okay, company procuring purchasing company is like allow them to involve in the supply chain, which means like they allow the supply the buyer, okay, our company to be involved in the design part or in like some technological part consultation as well. And actually, this is a 2 point that later we will mention in the case of Samsung, where like the supplier, okay, willing to do so. But in some case, especially for the case of Vietnamese supplier, it can be considered as one sort of benefit as well. Okay. And moving to the next one, which is single source. Okay, single source. Single sourcing is like only one supplier for a particular materials. And to illustrate these strategies, we have an examples of Apple. Okay, everyone knows that Apple is the what is like the design. Okay, actually they are producer but not physically producing. Okay, they are the like manufacturers of iPhone. Okay, iPhone is one of their products. More precisely, iPhone is one of the products that they introduced to the market. So in the iPhone, okay, there are many components, semiconductors, okay, and many parts. And of course, Apple doesn't produce any specific components on their own. All of the components are purchased from suppliers, and even the assembling, even the combining part is done by outsourced manufacturers. So in the iPhone, there's a part which is very, very, very important. That is the chip, okay, the chip of the phone, or we call it the A series chip. So of course, like some of you may be like very, I mean, like master in terms of technological. So for the phone, for a smartphone, a chip is a strategic component, is really important component because it can determine the speed of resolution, okay, the speed of like all functions, okay, operation in the phone. So for the A series chip, especially for example, like for the iPhone 11, okay, it uses A13 chip. So for these components, Apple applies single sourcing, which means that for this chip, they only buy from one supplier, which is TSMC, like technological producer, okay, a semiconductor producers in Taiwan. Now, I would like to ask, like in the case they only buy from one supplier like this, what is the advantage for the buyer? What is the advantage for the procurement company? For example, in the case of Apple and TSMC, buying the chip from only one TSMC, what are the advantages Apple can receive? Exclusive. Okay, thank you, Michael. What do you mean like exclusive?
Em thưa cô là em theo em là kiểu khi mà chỉ có một nguồn cung cấp thì mình có thể là một cái độc quyền ạ.
Một nguồn cung cấp thì mình có thể là độc quyền,
Vâng ạ.
độc quyền về cái sản phẩm đó.
Vâng.
Okay. Yes, however, like this case is only true if in the market there's only one supplier having that products. Đúng, điều này của Mai Phương thì cũng có thể đúng, nhưng trong trường hợp là trên thị trường chỉ có một cái doanh nghiệp để cung cấp cái sản phẩm đó thôi, đúng chưa? Và and one more thing, and they also agree to supply to our company only. Và việc thứ hai là họ cũng phải đồng ý, tức là trong hợp đồng họ cũng là ký hợp đồng độc quyền chỉ cung cấp duy nhất cái sản phẩm đó cho doanh nghiệp của chúng ta mà thôi. Đúng chưa? Thì nếu có thêm hai cái yếu tố đó nữa thì đúng là cái chính sách một nguồn cung này sẽ cho phép doanh nghiệp đạt được cái sự độc quyền, đúng chưa? Về một cái sản phẩm mà có lợi, có cái tính cạnh tranh cho sản phẩm, cho cái thành phẩm cuối cùng. Right. One thing. However, what if like there's also other supplier having the same kind of products on the market, as well as like the supplier, they don't agree to supply to our company only. For example, the case of TSMC. Actually, TSMC is also the supplier of LG, okay, of Samsung and some other technological company, you know, like some other smartphone manufacturer in the market as well. Okay, so okay, we have Hiền Anh said that it can be quality control. Okay, better quality control. Thank you, Hiền Anh. Mine say that like, we can improve relationship of supplier and company. So why do we need to improve the relationship of the supplier and the company? Why does relationship matter?
I think the relationship is matter because if we are able to maintain relationship, there will be more like benefit for us in the future while we negotiate with them during our partnership. I think so.
Okay, so we may have more advantages in negotiation. Thank you, Mai. And Zhang also said that like both sides, okay, can okay. So first of all, like yeah, if the supplier has the first tech, right, has the first tech device release, they can be the first one release. They can be the first one that can access. Thank you, Hoàng Giang. And of course, one thing that like single sourcing can share the same benefit with few sourcing that we discussed before. It's about like economy of scale, and it's also explain why Giang said like cả hai đều hưởng lợi, đúng không? So you can imagine like for the volume, the sales of the global sales of apples, okay, so many products all over the world in many countries, and all of those products are using the chip from one company themselves. So you can imagine like how big the deal, okay, how big the contract that Apple set with TSMC is. So even though, of course, in addition to Apple, TSMC also supply for some other company, but for the deal with Apple only, it's also account for a lot. Is the reason why like he said it, okay, the supplier also benefit here. Duy nhất mua hàng, đúng rồi, cho nên là người ta vẫn có cái sự, trên lát chúng ta sẽ nói đến cái bạn của bạn Hiền Anh, bạn đã phản biện rất là hay, đó là có cái người duy nhất mua hàng cho nên sẽ có một cái có cái risk, có cái disadvantage, đúng chưa? There's no. Okay, so suppliers is critical to the success of the firm. That is a benefit. Okay, and we need to improve the relationship that become a part of the business enterprise. So because of these matters, it is necessary. Now we come to the part of relationship as mindset. Okay, we come to the part that it is necessary for an intensive integration. Okay, the intensive integration tích hợp một cách tăng cường, đúng không? Higher level integration. Higher level integration can be in various forms, in like different forms. One of it is like alliance. Okay, they may sign some agreement to be long-term partnership with each other, to an agreement to be like long-term partnership, for example, like or like mutual benefits. I mean, like they can share some benefits to each other. Something that Apple normally apply, for example, like they will purchase in advance, or we say like purchase the production capacity, not purchase the products. What it means here, it means they will deposit amount of money in advance for the suppliers to purchase the producing capacity. For example, in the last 6 months, a year, okay, the supplier is capable in total, they can be able to per month, okay. So purchasing, buying, production capability, it means, for example, like Apple will deposit money to purchase like 50% of the production capabilities of the supplier. They deposit money in advance, even though they haven't need the products to be shipped yet. So it means that there's a integrated commitment between the supplier and Apple here. No matter like how many other suppliers, how many other clients, how many other firms come to the suppliers to purchase a product, they still have to devote 50%, mean like 50,000 chips per month for Apple, no matter like they have 3 other customer or 30 other customer. Okay. So that is like integration guarantee, okay, the benefit for companies like Apple. For the firms, what can they benefit? Can they be benefited from that guarantee? They can have financial flow, which is really fundamental for a manufacturing firms, since they need the cash flow to purchase materials, to purchase components, to pay for the human resources, so that like they can operate the mechanism to produce the products for shipping. Of course, as Renee said, because they are not the only customer, okay, there's still possibility that they are not the only customer of the supplier. So the risk, it can be risky for them. For example, like the supplier, they get better deal, they will move from selling for you to another customer. For the case of TSMC, okay, it could be really risky for Apple when they would like to stop like selling for Apple, and they just like focus on selling for LG, for Samsung, for Huawei, and so on. And if that situation happened, it could be a big problem for Apple. So the question here is normally how company often resolve these kinds of disadvantage or risk. Normally, like if we apply the single sourcing, the company normally they would accommodate, okay, fulfill the demand of the supplier. Most of the common demand is that they would like to raise the price. For the reason they say that like the cost for produce that product is increased, I would like to raise the price. And if your company is applying single sourcing strategies, it is very likely that you have to accept that requirement and raise the payment for the supplier. And for that reason, single sourcing is not something that you can apply like for every item that your company purchase, because the risk is so huge and so big. And normally, like they just apply for some items that hold really, really strategic importance, can determine the competitive needs of the products. Okay, first thing. And second thing, for company which is apply single sourcing, it is like holding a bomb. And in order to avoid the risk of that bomb, normally they will think about what can they do to avoid the single sourcing, to have one extra source or to have a backup for me, or like to strengthen the integration. Dạ. Rồi để giải thích cái chỗ của bạn Hiền Anh, đúng không ạ? Đâu có phải là người mua duy nhất đâu, đấy chính là một cái vấn đề, đúng không? Nếu mà như ý ban đầu của bạn Mai Phương có đưa ra ấy, là họ sẽ có được những cái hợp đồng độc quyền, tức là giữa mình và cái doanh nghiệp mà mình mua duy nhất từ một cái nguồn đấy, họ cũng chỉ độc quyền, họ chỉ cung cấp cho một cái doanh nghiệp của chúng ta thôi. Thì đấy là một cái bài toán rất là đơn giản, đó, cái việc mua rất là đơn giản rồi. Và thông thường thì cái độc quyền đấy ít khi có được lắm, mà thường là họ sẽ biến cái công ty đang là nguồn cung ấy thành là công ty con, thì sẽ cam kết được vào cái sự cung cấp độc quyền. Vậy thì trong cái trường hợp mà không phải là tức là mình chỉ mua từ một nguồn, nhưng nguồn đấy thì lại không phải chỉ cung cấp cho doanh nghiệp của mình, lại cung cấp cho nhiều doanh nghiệp khác, mà thông thường là cung cấp cho nhiều đối thủ khác trong thị trường, đúng không? Thì cái rủi ro nó rất là lớn. Rủi ro đầu tiên, ví dụ như Hiền Anh nêu ra, đúng không? Chắc gì mình đã là cái người duy nhất, người đầu tiên có được sở hữu được những cái sản phẩm công nghệ tân tiến nhất mà không phải là đối thủ. Rủi ro thứ hai đó là có thể cái nhà cung cấp của chúng ta sẽ dừng, không cung cấp cho chúng ta nữa. Họ có thể dừng đơn hàng và họ chuyển sang cái doanh nghiệp đối thủ khi mà họ có những cái deal, có những cái thương vụ lời hơn, đúng không? Hoặc họ đưa ra những cái yêu cầu mà đến một cái thời điểm doanh nghiệp chúng ta thấy rất là quá quắt và không có thể áp dụng được, ví dụ như là tăng những cái giá của sản phẩm lên chẳng hạn, tăng của giá của cái sản phẩm thu mua đó. Vậy thì trong tình huống đó thì doanh nghiệp để giải quyết cái vấn đề đó, cái mình là cái lát nữa chúng ta sẽ apply vào đúng cái cây Samsung, thì bao giờ doanh nghiệp với trong cái tình huống với cái sản phẩm mà họ đang ở trong cái vị thế là họ chỉ có một nguồn cung này, thì bao giờ doanh nghiệp cũng đứng trước hai lựa chọn. Một là họ phải có nguồn cung backup, tức là họ bao giờ cũng phải có thêm một nguồn cung nữa. Một có thể là cái nguồn cung nữa đấy để biến nó từ single sourcing thành few suppliers, tức là từ một nguồn cung thành hai nguồn cung đồng thời, hoặc là sẽ là nguồn cung tiềm năng, tức là nguồn cung dự phòng đó. Cách thức thứ hai, thay vì việc là có thêm một vài cái nguồn cung dự phòng nữa, thì họ có thể là phải tăng cường cái intensive integration lên, tức là tăng cường cái mức độ tích hợp giữa mình và đối tác lên, tức là tăng cái sự phụ thuộc của đối tác, chính là cái phần mà chúng ta sẽ giải thích ở phía đằng sau này, tức là cái mối quan hệ giữa doanh nghiệp và cái đối tác nhà cung cấp ấy, thay vì việc chỉ là qua những cái hợp đồng ấy, thì họ phải làm chặt cái hợp đồng đấy lên trên những cái cấp độ cao hơn. Cấp độ cao hơn đầu tiên có thể là những cái mối quan hệ là hợp tác chiến lược. Hợp tác chiến lược là những cái bản cam kết giữa hai doanh nghiệp, ví dụ như là đó, như một trong các điều khoản ở đây có thể là Apple sẽ là cái đối tác mà sẽ được nhận những cái sản phẩm công nghệ tân tiến đầu tiên. Đó chính là một trong những điều khoản mà thường sẽ được đưa vào trong cái hình dạng là ở các cái hợp tác cam kết chiến lược. Các chiến lược cái mức độ tích hợp chiến lược cao hơn. Thứ hai nữa có thể là doanh nghiệp sẽ tham gia vào góp vốn, là chính ở cái mức độ đằng sau mà chúng ta sẽ nói đến bây giờ, là tăng cường lên. Thì another way is vertical integration, backward integration. So first of all, what is backward integration? Backward make you think about a chain, right? A line. So refer to a supply chain here. Okay, on the screen you see here, this is a supply chain. Ví dụ cô lấy đơn giản một cái mô hình làm một cái chuỗi cung đơn giản, đúng chưa? And a supply chain is owned by, được lãnh đạo bởi một cái doanh nghiệp lãnh đạo chuỗi. Okay, focus from here. So this is actually it can be very various. If a supply chain of 7-Eleven, right? Focus firm is a retailer. If it is a supply chain of Nike, firm is a manufacturer. Okay, if it is a supply chain of Apple, focus firm is just in charge of R&D, okay, manufacture and other things outside to our partner. So backward it means to the back, right? So vertical backward integration refer to the part that you have integration with your supplier. The company have integration with your supplier. In this case, we call vertical integration. The examples of integration, it can be like acquire a supplier, buy the supplier, okay, make the supplier become a subsidiary of the company, invest in the supplier, okay, you can buy stock, buy the share of the supplier, so that you will be an investor for the suppliers. Okay, that is the two most common form of integration. And vertical backward, it means that you integrate with your supplier. Of course, the benefit of it is obvious since we already discussed the disadvantages of single sourcing. So vertical backward integration, you can understand it as a solution, okay, as a like solver for the single sourcing. It means like it will improve the ability to produce the goods, the service that previously you depend on the supplier. And this one incredibly meaningful in the case that previously you have only one supplier. And of course, when that manufacturing components or materials become a part of your company, it also allow you to have more opportunity to have controls in terms of qualities, in terms of cost. You can deduct the cost when it is redundant, and you also like merge the inventory. Because before, for example, when you purchase fabric, right, you also have to hold a certain amount of inventory in your warehouse, and the supplier, they also have to hold a certain amount of inventory in their warehouse so that they can respond to your order quickly and as short as possible. However, now supplier, okay, the fabric supplier becomes a part of your corporation. So instead of holding inventory in two locations, need to hold the inventory for fabric in one entity, for example, like the central warehouse of the entire company, okay, or only in the warehouse of the suppliers. And in such case, like the inventory cost can be reduced. One of the example, okay, of course, like, however, I really like the purchase of Tang when he mentions about the condition for applying the theory. So for the vertical backward integration, it has condition as well. In this case, I would totally agree that only big company can do. Okay, for the vertical backward integration, definitely only big company, big scales company can apply this strategy. The reason why so, because it requires a huge amount of capital. Okay, the deal for purchasing, okay, acquiring another company, it could be from million to even $1 billion. Later, we will discuss about like $1 billion deal of purchasing of acquisition. In addition to that, okay, when you acquire a company, it doesn't mean that you just acquire the building, you just purchase the supply, the manufacturing chain, but you apply the entire working mechanism from workers, okay, suppliers, and other things. So it requires the fact that your company needs to have the skills, the ability to manage that business. And it's often a problem because sometimes the supplier, they are working in a totally different business and your company has no idea of how to manage it. For example, if the supplier like supply food and your company is a tech company, the managing skills are totally different. So purchasing like a food company doesn't really isn't a perfect choice for a tech company. Okay. However, yes, of course, you are a tech company and your supplier like semiconductor. So the field is more or less like quite similar, familiar with each other. So it's possible for you to apply your managerial skills and to the new entity. Okay. And to illustrate this point, I have the example of Apple again. Of course, in this case, not the A-series chips anymore, but it's about cellular modem. Okay, it is a part, okay, like component on the phone, allow it to receive and send cellular signals. Okay, so now we talk about the 5G network. So like the cellular internet can be incredibly faster than 4G or 3G. So the part on the phone that decide or that determine whether the phone can access like 5G network or not is this modem, okay, this modem, which means that for company like Apple, Samsung, Huawei, Xiaomi, Oppo, and so on, the one that first can purchase this modem can be possible to have a phone that access the 5G network. From explaining that, you can understand that this cellular modem is a very strategic component of the phone. Okay? So for that reason, okay, actually for the phone like iPhone 12, Apple already, like the iPhone 12 is able to access the 5G modem. However, that modem, okay, is not purchased from Intel, but purchased from another supplier, which is Qualcomm. Qualcomm, okay, Qualcomm is an American supplier. Okay, and unfortunate, okay, unlucky for Apple at that time, okay, at the time they released like iPhone 12, okay, they prepare to release iPhone 12 was like 2018, 2019. Okay. So back to that time in the market, in the global market, everywhere in the world, Qualcomm was the only supplier that is able to produce 5G cellular modem. And that is the reason why so many companies in the world would like to purchase that item from Qualcomm. And as the single producers in the market, they have the monopoly power and they raise the price and the cost to an unacceptable level. And actually, Apple was really disappointed at that fact, since actually they are a long-term partner with Qualcomm. Before like the 5G modem, they was like continuously buy purchase from Qualcomm for the cellular modem for the previous versions of iPhone. However, because like for the cellular modem, they apply the single sourcing set strategies. And as we discussed about like the benefit of the disadvantage of this, so Apple was not happy. They faced the risks, but they couldn't do anything. They have to accept that bloody expensive price from Qualcomm and contribute to explain why the iPhone 12 was so like expensive, even though it doesn't have any breakthrough in terms of design. And for that reason, they think about like solution to avoid the situation again when it comes to next versions of now we have iPhone 13, right? So right in 2019, after that unhappy deal with Qualcomm, Apple decided to purchase, okay, to acquire another supplier who used to supply cellular modem to them, which is Intel. Okay, so in 2019, they acquired a modern business of Intel. You can make it clear here, they doesn't purchase Intel, all of Intel. They just purchase the business part in Intel, which is in charge of producing the modem. Okay, so they paid like $1 billion to purchase that part. So that like the purpose is that with the investment, with the capital, and also like with the creativities of the tech team, cellular team of Apple, together with the ability of Intel, because at that moment, actually Intel was also researching to produce a 5G cellular modem. However, they introduced the item later than Qualcomm. Okay, so Apple decided to join hands with another potential supplier in the market, with the purpose that in the future they can produce the 5G cellular modem by themselves. not purchasing from cotton anymore. And that is like an explanation of like what vertical backward integration is. And actually in the market, like, there are many examples of vertical backward integration, not just in tech industry, but also in other industry like agriculture, food. Okay, food production is a very common example of vertical backward integration as well. So here's the reason, right, why, okay, they apply. So the reason for single supplier, and actually this part is very important and very helpful for you when you explain, when you answer the part like why does the company apply that strategies. I'm not sure you apply in you, or you use it in your answer or not. Okay, so for the company, right, they will, if they apply single supplier, mean that they want to lower the cost by using economy of scale. They want to have like higher level of responsibility, like higher level of service, higher level of willingness to adapt to their requirement. Okay, and also like the volume. Okay, in some case, okay, of course, like even for small company, they cannot get like economy of scales, but they still apply single supplier because like the purchasing volume, okay, the deal that they placed at the supplier is too small. It's not big enough to split into 2 or 3 suppliers. But for like more than one supplier, the reason could be like the competitive, like they want to have a competition, or they want to avoid, as we say, like the risk of interruption, or the risk that like the supplier stop supplying. Sometimes like for the global, when a local market, they also have to fulfill the law requiring by the government. Okay. For example, like when they open a manufacturing site, and in order to get the permission from the local authority for them to hire the land and get rent and build factory there, they also place some requirement that you have to use, like you have to purchase the proportion, the percent. So in such case, the company also have to use them more like the local requirements. And for the capacity, it means like from one supplier, however, the supplier cannot fulfill the capacity. You want to purchase 1,000. However, the supplier, the capacity per month of the supplier is only 50,000. So in such case, definitely the company have to pay to buy from more than one supplier, maybe like 2 or 3 that can fulfill the last capacity of the. Okay, and next one. Okay. We have 4 strategies. Now the question here is like, how can the company decide which strategies for their purchasing? Okay, so in order to decide it based on, from the example that we explained before, from the example that we explained before, it is also like depends on a number of factors that influencing the decision of supply strategies. For example, like the item, okay, technological sophistication, okay, like whether the item is easy to produce or very difficult to produce, so that like whether on the market, in the market, there are many or few suppliers that are able to produce the item or not. The profit impact of the materials, it means that like the component, okay, whether it accounts for 50% of the profit or it accounts for none of the profit. Okay, the risk impact of the materials, it means like whether it can arrive on time or it is too far away, and maybe like when it may be delivered 1 month later than scheduled. Okay, and also supplier capabilities and so on. So from this point, you can say like you can tell that most of the items come from the nature of what we buy, and therefore, and apart from the previous part, we can count for the multiple supplier. I make the examples of multiple supplier and make the example of buying like stationery, but for the items like for the strategies like single sourcing, vertical integration, and make the examples like strategic component like cellular modem, like a series chip and so on. So one of the method for the company to decide which strategies to follow is based on the nature of the item. Classify the item. We call it like portfolio management. Okay, and in order to classify the item, grouping the items, we use one thing called project supply matrix. Okay, project supply matrix is the name, and it's based on two criteria. Okay, the first one is based on the supply risk, whether it is high or low. Okay, supply risk, it means that the risk that the supply is interrupted, the risk that the supply is unavailable in the market, the risk that the supplier stopped supplying. Okay, so it normally related to the part like whether there are many suppliers in the market or there are few suppliers in the market. And the second is a profit impact. It means how important the components two components, two criteria we can classify into three group of purchasing items. Okay, it could be item, it could be like leverage items, it could be bottleneck items, and it could be false items. Now we come to the nature, some general descriptions of those items. Here are some like specific criteria: supplier rates, availability of supplier number, supplier substitution like other supplier. Okay, profit impact like volume purchase, percentage of total cost. Okay, impact of product quality to the business growth. So here's the like characteristics of those items. For the strategic items, which means that the item that has like high risk of supplying, also like hold a high value, okay, contribute large. For example, like for the iPhone, the chip, okay, it contributes to the large proportion of the total cost of purchasing all components. Okay. Like the chip is the most expensive component for the phone, and so for that case, normally like it normally in the terms some examples of strategic items is like some engines, machine. Okay, even though machine is not a part of the final product, so however, without a machine you cannot like produce, or the machine can decide like how innovative the product is. So technologies, I mean like technological items, or even the technologies to manage the operations. Okay, so for the leverage items, it means the items that the risk of the supplier is low, which means maybe like for that item in the market, there are many suppliers. You can easily find a substitute supplier if your current supplier stop selling to you. However, that item is expensive. That item account for large like proportions of cost to your final products. So in such case, okay, for an item like that, for a leverage item like that, the purpose, like there are many suppliers in the market, so you don't worry, there's only one, but it's high value. So your strategy is how to reduce that value, okay, how to have the competitive price, lower price, okay, so that you can purchase cheaper and you can reduce the production cost. So with that in mind, you can have many substitutes. It means that in such case, you should apply something like few suppliers at least, or even multiple suppliers, okay, so that you can achieve the competitive sourcing here. And for the bottleneck items, which is a really head-aching item, since like the value it contributes to the products is very low. For example, like that item is very cheap, or maybe like the change, okay, the various varied quality of the item doesn't affect much the like quality of the products. However, the risk is high. For example, like the supplier in the market is rare, or maybe like in the local market, there's no like available supplier, something like that. So normally it is a technical materials and little substitutes. Of course, in this case, there's no choice that like few or even a single sourcing is applied. However, you have to think about like create a strategic uh, relationship with the supplier to guarantee that the risk is eliminated. And for the last one, non-critical items really common, right? The one that you don't have to care really much about, low risk, low value, so always available. You can buy any at any moment. Okay, so that is like the nature of them. Here's like the example. Okay, I think that I will send you the like this example, because the previous link you didn't have, so you can have this example to refer when refer to the projects. And here is like the solution, okay, the strategies for purchasing. For like this one is more specific. Okay, for the strategic items, you should have like use power to draw the suppliers into the partnership. Okay, can ensure that long-term partnerships. So normally for strategic item, like the case of Apple, they apply like vertical integration with the supplier. For the leverage items, okay, the purchasing powers also like for preferential treatment. Okay, it means that like you use your power so that you can maximize your preference in purchases. Because for leverage item, you don't have to like fulfill the need of the supplier, but you have to make the supplier to fulfill the need. Okay, so that you can have the lower price with better service. So normally for leverage items, multiple sourcing is a good choice. For bottleneck items, okay, you have to, because not many suppliers in the market, so you will depend, okay, you have to think about the strategies that to reduce that dependence, okay. For example, like in terms of purchasing, you cannot purchase from many suppliers, so you can think about the inventory, you hold the stock, okay. So ensure that like even if some interruption happen, you still have a stock to be safety, to be safe, or you have to build like long-term contract, sign long-term contract with the partner. For non-critical items, just simply like some automate procurement process. So like that is the end of the procurement. Today we officially finished the procurement. I'm very sorry that we ran out of time now, so we don't have enough time for the case analysis. So for the next day, who will like finish the case analysis both for Samsung and Honda. Okay, so because today we'll have like further explanation. So I would like for the student first of all, like I have received a 17 submission for your, yes, one thing. Okay. I have received like 17 submission for the case analysis. Okay. So for this 17 student, I will mark like you submit on time. Okay. It means like you will not be like deducted because of late submission.